Dark videos like the one you're watching now look pretty bad. No matter what platform or device you're using, you've probably noticed those weird patches or blocks in the image where it's hard to distinguish what's there. And if the color is static with a gradient, it's even more noticeable. And no, it's not just because of video compression. For example, look at this image of the sun. Since there's barely any movement, compression doesn't affect it much. But if I start increasing the brightness, suddenly strange lines appear in the image. Has this happened to you? I'm sure it has. So, why does this happen? Why, despite today's high image quality, do we still have these issues? And what do colors have to do with it? Well, stick around and I'll tell you all about it. I'm sure you've seen high-quality videos here on YouTube, whether in 4K or even 8K, but despite all that quality, there's a common problem. If there's low lighting or an object in the center with a background color that has very little movement, patches appear in the image. If we're talking about a gradient, they usually appear as lines, and if the image is moving and quite dark, they look like patches. Some of you might say this happens due to lighting issues and file compression by YouTube and other platforms. Some might even comment that they don't need to watch the video to know what's going on. But no, those factors play a role, but not entirely. The real issue is that our monitors, phones, or TVs don't have enough colors. Saying that a monitor or TV doesn't have enough colors sounds strange because when we look at a 4K or 8K image, everything seems super sharp. But the problem isn't resolution. It's the number of colors each pixel can display. Most screens we use today have what's known as 8-bit color depth per channel, or 24 bits in total. This means they can represent approximately 16.7 million colors. And while that sounds like a massive number, it's not always enough to represent smooth gradients in certain situations. But where do those 16 million colors come from? Well, what you're seeing now is an image that looks quite bad, right? That's because we drastically reduced the color depth. It looks like an old video game image, doesn't it? Well, let's explain. We all know that the pixels on our monitors are made up of 3 subpixels: red, green, and blue. That is the famous RGB. But these colors don't just turn on and off randomly to form an image. They follow certain rules. For example, if each subpixel could only be on or off, we'd have a color depth of 1 bit per channel. That means each color only has 2 options: red on or off, and for green and blue the same. Combining these options, we can only form 8 colors in total: black, red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, magenta, and white. So if you see an image with this color depth, it would look extremely limited and ugly, like very old computer graphics or, as we mentioned earlier, color video games. In quotes, but quite old. But what happens if we increase the number of color levels per channel? If instead of just on or off, each color could have 4 intensity levels, we'd have 2 bits per channel, giving us 64 possible colors. This number comes from 4 levels of red, 4 levels of green, and 4 levels of blue. Right now, the image still looks pretty bad. If we increase it a bit more to 4 bits per channel, we have 16 colors per channel and a total of 4,096 colors. This is much better. And finally, with 8 bits per channel, we reach the 16.7 million colors we use today in most monitors. This number comes from 256 levels of red to black, the same with green and blue. So 256 times 256 times 256 gives us 16.7 million colors. With this amount, the image already looks pretty good. Engineers concluded that 8 bits per channel is the cheapest and most efficient way to represent almost all colors, and it usually isn't a problem for most images. But this standard is quite old. It dates back to the late 90s and early 2000s when this conclusion was reached. But what happens? An 8-bit color depth wasn't an issue when our monitors had a maximum resolution of 640 by 480 pixels, because with only 640 pixels in width, fitting 256 colors in a gradient looked pretty good. But now imagine this on a full HD screen. If we do the same exercise with 1,920 pixels in width, we divide that width by 256 colors. That gives us approximately 7.5 pixels per color, meaning the color bands that form the gradient become very noticeable. This is where problems start to appear since the color range isn't sufficient to smoothly transition between colors on a higher resolution screen. And if we do this with 4K or 8K resolutions, it's even more noticeable. So is there a solution to this problem? Yes. The solution involves what's known as 10-bit color depth per channel, or 30 bits in total, and getting a monitor with HDR. You've probably noticed that adding just one extra bit of color, or doubling it, makes the number of colors skyrocket. For example, with 1 bit per channel, we get 8 colors, with 2 bits, we reach 64, and with 4 bits, we already have 4,096 colors. But if with 8 bits per channel we get 16 million, how many do you think we'd have with 10 bits? 100 million? 200 million? Actually, 1.073 billion colors instead of the 16.7 million that we get with 8 bits. This improves gradient smoothness and color transitions, eliminating those annoying patches and visible lines. With 10 bits per channel, each color has 1,024 intensity levels, making transitions much smoother. On a 1920 pixel resolution screen, we'd have more than 4 pixels per color, making variations much less noticeable. So how do you know if your monitor has more than 8 bits per channel? The easiest way is to check its specifications. Many HDR supporting monitors work with 10-bit color depth, as this is key to displaying images with a wider range and smoother color transitions. Monitors designed for video and image editing are also often 10-bit, since they need to represent colors more accurately. But here's the big question: if I have a 10-bit HDR monitor and go on YouTube, why do I still see those patches and lines and gradients? The answer is simple. The problem isn't just your screen. To truly see the difference, the content also has to be in 10 bits. If the video you're watching was recorded, edited, or compressed in 8 bits, you'll still see the same defects no matter how good your monitor is. Additionally, platforms like YouTube compress videos to save bandwidth, which can reduce color quality even in HDR videos. Still, the advancement toward monitors and content with higher color depth brings us closer to a more faithful representation of reality. Over time, as more devices and platforms adopt standards like HDR and 10 bits per channel, these problems may disappear and images on our screens will be as smooth and natural as we see them in real life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. I read all comments, so leave one below. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!